The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is proud to be presented by Vans. Season 7 of FNRad is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Anon Optics, Time Bomb Trading, the Canadian distributor of Stance, Dragon, 32, and much more, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. The Boardroom Snowboard Shop in Vancouver has been selling snowboards since the very beginning. Murray Fraser's philosophy of offering the best selection of the very best snowboards and accessories at the guaranteed best prices has made the Boardroom one of the longest-standing snowboard shops on the planet. The Boardroom has 3 locations, 2 in Vancouver and 1 in North Van, plus they ship to anywhere in North America through boardroomshop.com. I worked for the Boardroom from 93 till 2007, and I can tell you from experience that they stand behind the products they sell. Use discount code FNRad5 at checkout to save an additional 5% off at boardroomshop.com. Support also comes from Grouse Mountain, Mount Seymour, New Greens, the Superfood Drink, Volcom Outerwear, Intuition Liners, and GoPro. Thanks to everyone who supports the show. Tracey Canaday and his brother Tim started Never Summer Snowboards in 1991. Tracey and Tim grew up in Colorado, where the Never Summer mountain range had pockets of snow the whole year round. Actually, Never Summer was the brothers' second snowboard brand, which they started after spending time in California. Before that, Tracey and Tim had a snowboard brand called Swift.
Yeah, Swift started before Never Summer.
Yeah.
So, you know, when Tim and I were small, we loved skiing back in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And we'd always go out to California. We grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado. And we'd go out to California to Bakersfield to go visit our cousins about every summer. And then they would take us to Ventura, Carpinteria, you know, to go check out the ocean. And we always wanted to learn how to surf, right? So we were skiers. And then up at Berthoud Pass, a buddy of mine's older brother had a Burton back hill. And he was surfing down Hell's Half Acre up at Berthoud Pass. And I'm like, man, I want to try that. So, you know, after trying a Burton back hill up at Berthoud, one time I was hooked, never skied again. And, but back then those boards were so simple, you know, just Baltic birch. It was just like that table right there, you know, Baltic birch, right? And so, they were easy to make. And, Tim and I were like, hey man, why don't we start building them in our garage? And at that time, my good buddy, Scott Rolfs, his older brother was the one that was, let us use the Burton back hill. Scott and I started Swift in the early 90s when we were just out of high school.
Now, that's the early 80s, right?
Early 80s, early 80s, yeah. And then my brother came along and had a woodworking class when he was in junior high. And the junior high woodworking instructor helped us make some molds.
Oh, wow.
Bar clamp molds, you know.
That's
So we built Swift snowboards for about 3 years, sold them to friends and family. And it's funny, the first board that we ever sold at retail, we sold for, I think it was like $105. And it was to a person in Gunnison, Colorado. So Scott and I loved road trips. And so we're like, okay, let's hand deliver this board from Fort Collins to Gunnison, you know, which takes 5 hours, you know, one way to get up there, deliver the board and drive back. So, you know, obviously, you know, didn't make any net profit on that first board.
How did the person in Gunnison hear about Swift snowboards?
Okay. So, man, it's hard to remember, but we put ads in the Collegian, I think it's called the Collegian newspaper up at CSU, Colorado State University.
Rad.
And Scott and I taught snowboarding in 1984 with CSU. They would let us take a 15-passenger van. It was called the Experimental Learning Program, the ELP program.
Rad.
And so we had a 15-passenger van, and we would take people from CSU up to Berthoud Pass and teach them on Hell's Half Acre in the powder, which was a disaster, right? Trying to teach people that had never snowboarded in knee-deep powder. But I did that for a year, and then Scott did it for a second year.
Rad.
And but anyway, this guy must have found the ad that we placed in the magazine, and so we did that for about 3 years, and then went back to school. And it was pretty early on. So, we had these dreams that we were going to make a lot of money, with Swift Snowboards. But reality hit. It was, still a sport or industry in its infancy, right?
Totally.
So, went to CSU, studied economics. My brother moved out to California to Huntington Beach. I dropped out of CSU and moved to San Diego in the late 80s. And, my dream was always to learn how to surf. So went out there because I wanted to surf, and I worked up in Del Mar. And so it was nice to go up to Encinitas or
I was just
Cardiff
in Del Mar at
Lucadia,
at Kevin Kinnear's place.
Okay.
He lives in a 70s cottage that's just like right there, like walking distance to the beach.
Oh, that's awesome.
What a beautiful spot.
Yeah. So I worked for this company called American Film Technologies, and we colorized all the old black and white movies for Ted Turner. So we ruined these movies. I mean, they're just copies, but if you ever see any of those old black and white movies that are colorized, we did that. So I worked out there a couple years, and then Tim and I started snowboarding in Southern California, at Big Bear and Snow Summit. And you could just kind of sense that the sport was growing, late 80s, right?
Right.
And so Tim and I met with Tim's now father-in-law, Nick Giancamelli, and we're like, hey, listen, man, I think we need to get back into the snow business. Well, he had a place in Vail, and so we moved from California to Vail, and met Steve Link. I don't know if you remember that name.
Of course.
Steve,
of course.
Steve Link from Summit.
007,
right. Absolutely.
Summit Snowboards.
Absolutely.
Babysat by Tom Sims when he was a kid.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we met Steve and said, hey, Steve, listen, we used to build snowboards back in the day, and you got your place up here in Summit County, and we'd love to give you like $400 a month if you just let us use your tools and your presses, and we're going to just start prototyping. So Tim and I started prototyping, and I guess how we got our foot in the door was, my brother and I really didn't know anybody in the industry. We never competed in snowboard. We just loved, backcountry snowboard. That's what we did. And Steve was building these skids for snowmobiles, and he was making the skids out of PTEX, polyethylene. Okay, and so we're like, man, what if we use polyethylene for sidewalls? Because back in the early, I guess late 80s, early 90s, that it wasn't a thing. PTEX was not used on sidewalls. So we started using PTEX on the sidewalls, and we realized we had something unique and durable. So we came out with this 2-year warranty. I drove around the country in my little Honda Civic at the time, showing these little cross sections to shops, all around. And most of the shops looked at me like I was crazy, like, who are you, And but some shops, loved it. One of the first shops that really took interest was Cal Surf in Minneapolis.
Rad.
And we went from 0 to 120 snowboards a year in 2 years back in the early 90s. Oh, yeah. Cal Surf, and then obviously Colorado, the Boardroom, Vince Sanders, Tom Lacrosse and Dave Smith at BC Surf and Sport. There was a shop up in Vail called Cherry Pow. All right. So those were the first accounts, and then Milo Sport came along,
Sick.
Salt Lake, and then Val Surf, down in Southern California. And once we had that, that unique message, I guess, of durability, then we were able to sell boards.
Yeah. I can remember having them up at the Boardroom, like I said, probably about 95. Might have been 94 even.
Yeah.
And they quickly gained this huge reputation with Australians, because Australians were coming to Canada to ride 150 days and bag on these boards.
Yeah.
And they were the only thing that, at the end of the year when they would come back, a lot of Australians were on this tip where they'd come back with a broken board and leave it for the summer, and then come back and get, brand new warranty board, right? But
that's right.
With the Never Summer stuff, they were getting years on these things.
Yep.
That was my sales pitch, was like, look, if I didn't work at a shop where I get a bunch of free boards to try out of all these different kinds of boards, I would buy a Never Summer, because I know that I can hit a rock with it and it's not going to explode.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say Australia, because Cherry Powell, one of the first accounts up in Vail, was run or owned by Richard Wellsmore from Sydney, Australia. And then his right-hand man is Chris Hammond, who's a great friend of ours, Hammer. And so he lives the life of Never Summer. He's here. I mean, we haven't seen him in a couple of years because COVID.
Yeah.
But he used to come back here every winter as a Never Summer ambassador, and then go back to Australia and just, snowboarded year round for, 25 years.
That's amazing.
And we still have a good relationship with him.
Chad Otterstrom told me that there's a Never Summer range out here.
That's how we got the name.
That's the name was that more than the endless winter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we were kids, my dad loved camping, and he would take when we were in Fort Collins, he'd take us up to the Never Summer range, Cameron Pass, which is up the Pooter Canyon. And I just felt it was a fitting name. So yeah, it's named after that mountain range.
Yeah, it was kind of clunky in the beginning. I remember being like, that is a long word. You know, when I'm like handwriting a receipt for it or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the name, because pretty much right away, as you guys are getting more and more popular, so is Grant's Never board, which is out of Vancouver.
Yep.
And I don't know where I first heard it. I you know what?
Yeah.
It was Rob Dow. Rob Dow came in and he was pitching new names to Grant because they'd got a cease and desist or something. There was some sort of
from us. Right?
Yeah. You guys had said well, look, we already got the name, and then they wanted to fight it, and then they went back to when it started, and you guys had them probably by years.
You know what though? I don't remember much of a fight because Grant was a great guy. And I haven't seen Grant in years, but it seemed to go pretty smooth. And then obviously they had a lot of success with Option.
Totally.
That went well. So I think it all worked out.
I don't think there was any bad blood there. It was an interesting story that happened, because at the shop we were selling Never and Never Summer, and also Never. You'd be like, look, these boards are durable. They're built really well.
Yep.
The only difference being they were built in Canada.
Yep.
Holy jeez, when you think back of that, no boards were built anywhere other than Pele,
Southern California,
Cali, or basically Canada, U.S., and some European stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely, Nidecker, and
oh yeah, those early boards for sure.
Absolutely.
So I can remember seeing you at trade shows, just flexing the boards backwards. And
that was our shtick. Was the durability, right? And it was true, because the fiberglass that we used, we were friends with, Gordon and Smith, the brand. Well, so the Gordon family, Bob and Mike Gordon had a company called Gordon Composites out of San Marcos, California.
Wow.
And they sell laminates, They sell glass laminates, pre-cured laminates. And they were real big in the archery industry, And so an archery limb has to be obviously very durable, because of the liability. You're pulling a bow back, and if it snaps and breaks and you knock an eye out, you're going to get sued, right?
Totally.
So we worked with Gordon, and they sent us some pre-cured fiberglass.
The pre-preg stuff.
Well, it wasn't pre-preg, it was pre-cured. Okay. Pre-cured means it's just a laminate. It's already been, the resin is already hard.
Oh, okay.
And this was pre-tensioned fiberglass. So you pull the glass strands tight, and then under pressure you cure it.
Whoa.
And so that's why they use it in archery. And we're like, man, why don't we try this in a snowboard? So you've got the pre-cured fiberglass that we still use, plus the P-Tech sidewalls. The boards were indestructible. Now they were heavy back then because we used to use a crap ton of rubber foil. We would put 2 full layers of rubber foil, so they were heavy as hell.
Top and bottom?
Absolutely, man.
And what was that for dampening? Or was that
dampening.
Because they rode like $1 million, but they were heavy as hell, man. Yeah.
So now we still use a lot of rubber foil, but we don't use near as much as we do.
Strips versus...
But the rubber foil is important because, like on a dirt bike, suspension is really important. And on a snowboard, when you're riding fast, you want to have nice suspension, but you got to still have pop and snap.
Yeah, of course. And now that you're doing some OEM production for guys like Academy and Sims, and so these guys are innovating, trying to make these lighter boards too, and saying okay, look, what if we take it out all together? What do we get? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you've become this kind of hub of a wheel.
Yep.
And did you ever think you'd be like one of the last manufacturers in the United States?
Well, I mean, you kind of think, hey, listen, how do you survive, basically, right?
Yeah.
And you survive by making good products and then kind of expanding out. And there's only so many Never Summer Snowboards because it's a premium brand sold at a pretty high price that we're going to be able to sell. So how do we grow the company, Never Summer Industries, beyond just the Never Summer brand? And so we started to do OEM projects, for Academy, obviously, D-Day, and Icelandic skis. We build a lot of Icelandic skis too.
Interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're out of Golden.
Yeah.
So they're one of, I think they are our largest OEM partner, and we build great skis too.
That's so rad.
Yeah, and they're built just like a snowboard, obviously.
Yeah, of course. What an incredible way in. Let's talk about that retailer protection that you did, because that is something that, having talked to Jamie Salter, he just doesn't seem to care about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he doesn't get it or if it's just not big enough for him so what we're talking about here is that the Never Summer boards are available through specialty retailers.
Correct.
Exclusively? Do you guys sell direct as well?
No. We sell direct now as well. But the overall number of units that we are selling now is pretty constant with what we were doing 2 and 3, 4 years ago. Okay. So it's not like we've got all of these specialty shops that are selling X number of units, and then on top of that, we want to sell direct.
Right.
With COVID, obviously we lost some shops, right? I mean, it's a tough retail environment out there, or they had to cut back some of their units that they order. So we're like, hey, listen, instead of us going into a market and finding an alternative shop to make up that ground, we're going to be the shop. We're going to sell it direct. We're not going to price compete. Yeah. And so it makes us a healthier company too.
Totally.
So we do not oversaturate the market at all. And even from the beginning, a nice story is there's a shop up in Portland called Daddy's Board Shop. And I remember Melanie, who was the owner at the time, she was interested, and I said, I'll give you an exclusive in Portland for an order of, I think it was 12 boards. And she thought I was crazy, right? So 12 boards, give her an exclusive. The next year she's doing over 100 boards. And she's doing advertising on our behalf with her dollar, not mine. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to be able to go into a market, pick one shop, give them, room, so they don't have to price compete and don't oversaturate the market. That's always been our recipe. Even selling direct now, we're not going to build too many units in a given year. We're gonna make sure that the demand always outstrips the supply.
How do you come up with that? Because in business, if you have a business partner that's lending you money, these guys are going to say, well, no, you want to sell as much as you possibly can. Yeah.
Well, we're private. We don't have, we've been running it since day one. We don't have a parent company. It's my brother and I, and then Nick, who's his father-in-law, and his wife. 4 same partners since day one.
And so all 4 people trust in this program.
It's a family, right?
Yeah.
We're a family-run business. I think we're the last family-run snowboard, manufacturer.
Right.
I think that Mervyn and us are about the same size.
Okay.
I'm kind of get that feeling from some of the suppliers that we have.
Yep.
I don't know if they're independent or if they still have the capital group that owns them. I don't know. But all I know is we've never sold. Okay. It's the same ownership structure since day one, 1991 with Never Summer.
Well, I've also heard this, and I might butcher it here, but like the Never Summer thing, the program, I think Murray sold me on it, saying like, look, these guys work to make the boards when they work, and they sell them for the winter, and then they take time off to actually go ride.
Yeah.
Is it, and the factory
now we
closes
used to be
down
no. We used to be seasonal.
Right.
Yeah, we have not been seasonal for years, but we have a pretty aggressive R&D program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fortunately here in Colorado, we have snow at A Basin or Loveland, well into May.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we're able to, test out new stuff all the time. But no, we have not been a seasonal company for years. We build year round.
But I'm into that. Like those years would have been good years for you guys.
Absolutely.
Because you're not working like a dog 12 months of the year just trying to keep up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There was some leisure built into the program.
Yeah, you had to have some balance to not get burned out.
No, most people don't have that. They don't because it's economically it's devastating.
It is, yeah.
Right?
And one thing that we did a little bit differently because we had to is we chose the path of building durable boards. We didn't spend a lot of money in marketing and team at the time. We have a great team now.
Yeah.
But I think on balance, how much we spend in marketing and advertising compared to some of the bigger guys is a fraction of what they do. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we're able to, we're a healthy company. And so we can continue to make great, snowboards and test the snowboards and deliver the snowboards on time. We have great relationships with our suppliers around the world because we pay on time or we prepay.
Yeah.
And so, by running a real lean company like that, it results in us being able to build much better products and deliver the products when we say we're going to deliver them.
Yeah, a lot of listeners will know what that struggle that it is. Like if you get your boards in September, you're a month behind. You had to have them in August to get them ready to go.
Yep.
But some listeners are just going to be consumer guys that are happy to see the boards come out in November by a clear out in February or whatever, and not really understand how all this stuff goes down. But the supply chain this year has just been insane.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, when we first got word that there was going to be some possible shutdowns, February and March of 2020. We were really aggressive with our suppliers, ordering a shit ton of fiberglass and epoxy and wood, and we filled it to the rafters. Right?
And, betting on yourselves, like your
Absolutely.
business isn't going anywhere.
Absolutely,
you need to have stuff just in case.
Yeah, and we've got enough raw materials right now on hand to get us through the end of January.
Yeah,
and we've got a lot of materials on boats right now. We can track that, and so obviously the boats are out there delayed, but we're way ahead of the curve when it comes to getting raw materials compared to maybe some other guys in the industry. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean that is definitely where the rubber hits the road this year, right? Like if you're built, this is where it's such an advantage to be built in the United States.
Yep.
That some of these brands, some brands that are relatively big even are going to be struggling huge this year.
Yeah, and some people say, why is it made in the United States so important? Well, the primary reason is my brother and I want to control the quality from start to finish every day. We're down at the factory every day, all right? And so, it's nice to think you're going to get a good quality product, but if it's, built 6,000 miles away, it's tough to keep your, finger on the pulse every day.
Yeah.
And you have to do it, especially in a time like now.
Yeah.
And so that's the primary reason why we're not going anywhere. We've got a factory down in Denver. It's awesome. We've got 75 great, hardworking employees. And, we build, I think, a perfect amount of snowboards per year to maintain great quality, but become a successful, strong business that can still push the envelope of innovation and technology in our sport.
So what's the division of duties between you and your brother? Like, is somebody the graphic guy that did all the polar bears and the
No. We're not we're not graphic guys. We're not graphic guys. I'm more of the demand side, and he's the supply side. So he run the factory. You know, he's got the engineering mind, and I had the business mind, and so we, obviously we've scrapped time to time. We've had fist fights in the office. I mean, we're brothers, and but I love him to death, and so it's obviously a struggle when it's a family-run business. But at the same time, we trust each other, with everything.
Yep.
And we've got great guys we've got, let me see here. I think we have close to 10 people over 20 years at our factory.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then we've got another probably 15 to 20 over 10 years.
It's obviously a good job.
So absolutely love it. And we treat them well, and we get them passes and snowboards, and we just have a great family.
You're going to get a lot of resumes after this comes out, because the industry is hurting in North America especially on this side, like the manufacturing side. And
it's a labor shortage. There's a labor shortage going on, man. People, marginally, I think are wanting to get paid more. When the government starts printing a lot of money and giving it to people just to sit around, then it's hard to, if you were paying a guy X, then 2 years later you might have to pay him, X times 2.
Yeah.
So
you got to build that into your margins.
Absolutely.
Into your program.
Yep.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about the passion side of it. You offer your staff passes if they want them. Is that the way that works, or is it a?
No. I mean, we work with Loveland and we work with Monarch.
Okay.
And so we get them passes. Most everybody snowboards in the factory, so it's a given that they're going to get a pass. And
wow.
Yeah. And we have some corporate passes as well. And
so transferable stuff for when friends come in from out of town.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are great resorts to work with for sure. And, another thing that we do that we used to see quite a bit, Burton used to have a pretty well-developed demo program. And I don't know how much they do now, but we're really proud of having probably the strongest demo program in the industry. I mean, we have a ton. We have about 4 or 5 trucks that go out to ski areas, set up tents all across the country, and when you're buying something that's $500 to $700, you got to test drive it, right? I mean, that's super important.
Yeah,
and so we're always going to be the leader in demos. I mean, it's super. I'd rather cut way back on other types of marketing to have that demo program grown even more.
Because as soon as someone gets on the board on the snow, they're going to fall in love.
Absolutely.
You could talk about it all day in an ad, or put ads on TV. You need to ride these boards, or get the best riders in the world on them to shill for you. But
absolutely, you'd never buy a car without test driving it, right?
Right.
And so I think it's super important.
Yeah.
And when we're building the boards too in our own factory, it's much easier to, not only get demos up on the snow, but we also have this R&D demo program that we're starting to do now, where we're doing new innovative designs that, you've not even seen yet. They're just white tops, and people get to come and give us feedback, and they may not like it or they may love it. And then we'll go ahead and look at that data and roll it into, possible innovation.
Dude, that's so cool. Who came up with the mustache camber? Because obviously Mervin's doing their banana tech and all that. Cambers came into the thing.
Yeah, that's a good story. So, back in, I think it was probably 2006 or 2007 when Mervin really started going with the skate banana. Yeah. I may be wrong a little bit on those dates, but, and then K2 had a I think it was the gyrator. And I remember Gags, who's our national sales manager. Love the guy. He's been with us forever.
Yeah.
He came back from a Utah, industry demo. And I think it was in, I think it was in 07 or 08. I think it was 07. And I'm like, hey, how'd the demo go? And we're used to hearing just such great glowing praise. And he's like, man, everybody was at the Mervin tent, not the K2. They're riding rocker. And we're like, what? What, really? And so we looked at Mervin's that was a little more interesting than the K2 to us.
Yeah.
And they had a, skate banana that was a rocker in between the feet, and then it was kind of planar or flat out towards the tip and tail. And a lot of the shops that we talked to absolutely love it, and they were crushing with the skate banana. I mean, 2-3 years, it was definitely by far probably the best-selling board. Yeah. And so it was a great new chapter in snowboarding because it got people to say, wow, this is a lot more fun, right? Yeah. It's more maneuverable, you know, it's easier to ride. But the one or the few negative comments that we would get on is like, yeah, we love it, but I wish it was just a little more stable riding fast, aggressively.
Yeah.
And so we looked at that design and we're like, hey, what if we do, rocker in between the feet and then, camber out under the, between the feet, then camber under the feet. So when you apply pressure, you're pushing the rocker into the snow, and that has a bite or a high pressure area. And then the ends of the effective edge or the ends of the camber then give you basically 3 pressure points overall versus just 2 pressure points on an overall traditional camber board.
Totally.
And so that's how we got it. We filed the patent and we
you
got
hit
it because
first try.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you tried like 20 different cambers and that was the one that worked.
Yeah.
You just were like, I wonder what happened if we do like a more aggressive camber. Because I remember the first time I rode it.
Yeah.
Fred was running Murray's shop, the boardroom. He goes, "You got to try this thing, man."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, I don't really love bananas, man. They're a little squirrely and really hard to ollie because there's no like they just feel kind of dead."
Yeah.
And he goes, "No, try this thing out. You're gonna like it." And it was like the perfect night for it. It was just like you could set an edge, right?
Yeah.
And I just rode that thing all night, just going,
"Yeah."
And you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. Now
this thing's fun.
Yeah, and we've got this new triple camber technology that's out, and basically it's 2 small rocker areas between the feet.
Yeah.
And so what that does is now add another pressure point when it's on edge. So you've got that much more edge bite, but then you still have the benefits of the overall rocker in soft snow.
Yeah.
And, my take on it is, and it's funny, when we go to trade shows, back in the day when the SIA show was huge, remember when we'd have like 30,000 people at those shows?
Yeah.
Okay, but there was one thing in common with everybody at that show. None of those people bought snowboards at full retail. When's the last time you bought a snowboard at full retail?
Oh God,
Never.
I don't think
Never?
I ever did.
Okay, ever. Okay,
no,
right.
Never my whole life.
Well, guess what? Shops have to sell boards at full retail, right? The industry, to be strong, has to sell boards at full retail.
Yeah.
So who are we kidding? We can all talk amongst ourselves about how great a certain design or profile is, but if 90%, this is just my guess, but I'll bet 90% of the people that are out there buying a snowboard at full retail want one snowboard that can do everything very well. That means powder, that means carving, that means going into the park. And so if some people on forums, they'll talk about quivers. Okay, but that's such a small percentage of people that are buying snowboards at full retail, right?
Oh,
so if you want to be a healthy business,
quiver guy at retail, no.
Absolutely. So you need to build a board that is super versatile.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why we are so confident in our design. We've got, some shops would be like, man, you guys need this rocker camber thing is done. You guys need to do traditional camera. We would just laugh like, dude, what are you talking about? And it's funny because we had one shop, BC Surf and Sport, in Denver, and they're a great account of ours. But they said, listen, man, you guys have got to switch and have some camber boards. And we're like, no, we're pretty comfortable with what we're doing. And he's like, okay, well, can we order a custom proto? Okay. And the proto is our best selling model by far.
Yeah.
And we're going to make it camber, and it's going to be the BC Surf and Sport custom proto camber model. Okay. Yeah. And they ordered, I think, 110 of them. And they've been doing, prior to that, they were doing these custom graphic boards for years and selling out like every year. That was the quickest selling board.
Yeah.
So we deliver them, and you know how many they sold in the first year? They sold like 6.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And we're like, wait a second. If there's such a demand for a Never Summer camber board out there, you would think that a proto camber out of a single shop that's got exclusive rights to market this thing, they should have sold out all of those.
All over the world, because people would be like, wait, I've been waiting for this.
Yeah, and listen, there's room for camber in the marketplace. Obviously, companies are having great success. Yep. But for us to be a successful business, we want something different, and we want something more universal, and we want something that is our technology and that we believe in. And so, the variety is the spice of life. If you don't want that type of profile, go someplace else. But I can tell you that our profile is by far the most versatile profile if you want one board that can do everything well.
Right. So this is a controversial point. Yeah. People get in fights over camber versus rocker. I'm not even kidding. But like I the numbers don't lie. So there's that. And I mean, anyone that I'm talking to that's on a traditional camber board, is usually like a pretty elite guy. They're not buying their board at a retailer.
There was this one dude at Rude Boys, and Rude Boys used to, I think, sell a lot of Never Summers, but man, he cracked me up a couple years ago, and he's like, well, we're not doing any more hybrid snowboard. We're not ordering any more hybrid snowboards.
Camber only.
I'm a camber only. I'm like, that's the most foolish thing you could ever do as a retailer. You'd want to have a product mix in your shop. It's like, dude, don't order them. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, he's probably doing the same thing that you're doing in the snowboard industry. He's going, look, we're going to be the hardcore guys that, you know, if you come into our shop and you say, oh, I heard this rocker thing's pretty good, you're going to get told, like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Buy a camber board or go somewhere else.
Hardcore according to him. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
no
which is the same. And I'm not picking on Rude Boys. I think that's actually pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
On the other side, it's like if someone came to you and said, listen, you got to make us a board in China that says Never Summer on it because we only sell boards that retail at $199.
Yeah.
You're going to have to tell that guy, even if he says, I'll buy 10,000 of your Never Summer boards right now, you got to say, hey, man, you're at the wrong place.
Right. Yeah.
That's basically it, right?
Yep.
Like, so kudos to you for believing in the rocker camber that you guys, that mustache profile.
Yeah.
I vouch for it on mic, and if I take any grief for that, well, go fuck yourself. I can do what I want. I ride what's good. I right now I'm riding the wired boards, and I went from Mervin to wired.
Yeah.
And wired's got like a hybrid.
Yeah.
But it's mostly camber under the feet.
Yeah.
And it took a few minutes for me to get like a couple laps. Like my first lap, I was like, oh shit, I don't know if I can ride this.
Yeah.
And then once I got used to it, I was like, oh, I love this. This is great. So I think that when you're in charge of a company and your company's doing well and you're reaching a broad market of the general public, you can't go wrong with something that's proven.
Yeah. Well, you know, think about
work.
Yeah, and think about and like I said, you know what's cool about it is there's room for all different types of profiles and shapes.
Yeah.
But if you look over the history of, and you could probably help me with this, the history of snowboarding, the best-selling models ever, Burton Custom, obviously, right?
Sure.
LibTech has got to be up there with two of them, with the Skate Banana and the Orca, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Never Summer Proto is doing well too.
It's in there.
Well, you know, you've got three of those four that have a hybrid profile because it is versatile for the people that are paying full retail. The 90% that just need something that can do it well. So we're just looking at the math, and we're looking at what makes snowboarding more fun.
I love that we're having this. The majority of the conversation is on camber now, but I mean,
Travis Rice is a rad rider, right? Chris Corning and Chase Blackwell. Those guys are elite riders, and they love hybrids. So there's always going to be room for both.
Yeah, I think you're right. Good design is good design.
Absolutely.
And that's the big thing. You guys have had the passion to build stuff and luck into some really, really good designs over the years, or not luck into it, I guess, because you've got that passion.
Yep.
You're the guys that ride the stuff that you make.
Yeah.
So you know what it is.
Yep.
And then, you know, anytime you find some success, if you just head off in that direction, it seems to be working, right?
You know, there's only one Budweiser, you know, and that's Burton. And I remember back in the day when my brother and I were, you know, chasing, you know, man, is there any way that we could be the next brand? I mean, you know, and then you look back on it and you're like, it's ridiculous. You know, we're basically a specialty, you know, craft beer, you know what I mean?
Right.
And in our opinion, we're the best in that space.
Cool.
But we're not going to compete with Burton, you know, on sheer volume, and that's fine. You know?
They started in a different place.
Absolutely.
Right? They started in a different place. I talked to Don like a month or two ago, and I didn't even know before this that they really got a big boost from producing over in Europe.
Yeah. Because
Europeans were asking for the boards. They didn't go there to sell into Europe.
Yeah.
They went there to make a ski board, you know,
right.
But then they're sitting in the office getting a bunch of requests from these shops that are already excited over there to get snowboarding going.
Yeah.
So that financially gave them a bit of a leg up, I think, over someone who was a little more innovative on the freestyle side, like Tom Sims.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Where he just didn't get that influx of money. But also, when we're talking about Burton and we're talking about Sims, we're not actually talking about Tom Sims and Jake Burton. We're talking about teams of people.
Absolutely.
With some with money expertise, some with product design knowledge. a huge supply of riders on the ground giving feedback. And
listen, my brother and I would not be where we're at without our team. Like I said, that many people being there for over 20 years. We have some super dedicated, smart guys that are on our team, and there's no way we could have done it by ourselves. No way.
Right.
Absolutely. It's a big team, and so we feel blessed and fortunate for sure.
I love this, man. Yeah, I mean, I've like I said, I've ridden a Never Summer. The last one I rode was that was like in my possession. Was like a spade tail. Yeah. What's the Premier?
No, the Swift. What? Oh, the spade tail. No, that's the old Premier.
Yeah, Premier.
Absolutely.
I had like a 65 Premier. I went to Jackson Hole on it.
Yeah.
I went to Montana on the thing.
Yeah.
It just was a machine.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Boards are getting wider and wider too, right? People's feet are getting bigger and bigger. It seems like every few years. So.
Yep, the hormones in the meat, and milk, and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You guys do some taper stuff too?
Oh yeah.
You offer a full line of stuff.
The Shaper series is all taper boards.
Oh, yeah.
The Swift has got 20 millimeters of taper. And I personally like, that's my favorite board. Taper, I think, is super fun. It just releases you out of carves a little bit faster, and it just feels surfier.
It's great in powder too. Holy shit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Little taper is awesome.
Yep.
I remember talking taper with Tom Burton. He's like, yeah, new trend. Come on. We had taper on our boards in the 80s.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like taper's always been a part of his. He had taper on every board that he's ever designed.
Well, I was surprised that Burton took a few years to get on the rocker camber profile. I think it was about 2 years it took them because
they were maybe fighting it a little bit. Yeah,
they were fighting it a bit for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard because, man, you got to keep up. But man, when you're a gigantic company like that, I think it's harder to switch
to pivot.
It's like
They're
a speedboat versus
something.
versus a super tanker.
Well, that was always the rumor at Vegas, right? That they're showing this year's line.
Yeah.
That's coming out next year.
Yeah.
And they've already finished the year after that, and they're working on the one after that. Like I remember just being like, my mind I can't wrap my head around this. How could they even be?
Well, man, back in the day, and I think this is correct. I read that Rosignol at one time, the ski company back in the 70s, was like the biggest in the world by far.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Olin. Somebody came out with the parabolic shape, and it made skiing more fun. And I think that it was Rosignol that resisted it.
Okay.
And so the Rosignol company today, because they resisted change compared to what they were in the 70s, I think might be telling. I'm not sure, but that's what I remember.
Sold a couple of times in the last few years.
Absolutely, man. Right. If there's new trends and new innovation, you really have to kind of stay in tune with what you're doing, especially when there's so many other options out there.
It cuts both ways too, right? Like it's got to hurt if you're a company like yourselves, and you come up with some sick innovation, and then Burton takes it and does it better, let's say, because they've got more money to do it.
Oh yeah.
But on the rocker thing, I'll tell you, and this is just my experience, but I knew the Burton rep. He was doing a demo, and I went up with him, and he's like, "Oh, you like those Mervin boards? Here, I'll set you up on the new custom rocker."
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh. I didn't like it. Well, I tried it out, and I didn't like it. But then I tried the exact same board with camber, and I was happy with it.
Yeah. It's a combination of a variety of things, okay? It's a combination of your edge hold, of your flex, and of the dampening properties, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not just one profile is going to do something for this company and that company equally.
Right.
It's a recipe, and you've got to find that recipe that satisfies everything. And once you find that, then you found your way, and you can start tweaking things and improving on it. But you can't just assume that, I'm just going to copy their profile, and you don't change everything else, especially with the pre-cured fiberglass that we use, which is so expensive. most companies don't use that, especially the bigger companies, because they're spending so much money in marketing that we don't spend. So, our material cost is, in my opinion, a lot higher than the material cost maybe on some of our competitors.
Yeah, I've been talking about this too. Who was it? It was Ernie DeLost said that Rossi sent their engineers or somebody.
Yeah.
They were like, somebody, it couldn't have been Rossi because they're going to manufacture their own shit. But some big company, maybe Solomon, came out and was like, hey, we're thinking about using you guys for manufacturing. So then they went and toured everybody's snowboard factory to take a look at what the hell they're putting in their things, right? Like there was, I mean, I remember Harry Guns from Rad Air and from Crazy Banana coming over and looking at the warranty boards to, break them open. Look what the hell is inside there.
It's so funny though, because I remember when Tim and I lived in California. I was in San Diego. He was up in Huntington, and we were going to start Never Summer, this second round of building snowboards, right? And so I came up with this idea. I'm going to go tour the Nectar plant in Encinitas, California, and I'm going to find out the secrets, right?
Yeah.
So I go up there, and I tour the Nectar factory, and it was a warehouse, and but I do remember seeing these honeycomb cores stacked to the ceiling. There was thousands of them, right? But did I learn anything? Hell no. Dude, I didn't know what I was looking at, right? Because I was, it just. But you think that you're going to get some secret information.
Yeah. Why don't you guys lay up one of these boards while I'm watching? Huh? I'll buy one of these from you right now, right? And then you see, that's where you put the dampening.
I obviously didn't tell him what I was up to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
totally.
It was just stupid.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a fun industry. That's the thing now. Having I'm not in it. I guess I am with this, but having started to peek behind the curtain in '93, going to trade shows and finding out, Sean Palmer doesn't sign every board himself and make it with his own hands.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Dude, that's so funny. It's so funny you say that, because Palmer is the most incredible athlete maybe in our industry, right?
Absolutely.
Insane.
One of, for sure.
Insane. But 100%. I remember the first year that Palmer had their booth. It had a booth at SIA. We were, I think, in the North Hall in Vegas. And we had, I think, a 20 by 20 booth, and Palmer had a 20 by 20 booth right next to us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is awesome. And I'm going to meet Sean Palmer. And dude, I never saw him once.
The
first year. Right? And I don't know, maybe he did show up and I didn't see him, but I was expecting him to be front and center, man.
How funny is that?
Handing.
That's exactly it. Right. And it was, I think that's a great example of it. It's like somebody licensing the Palmer name.
Yeah.
And, so I've been through that for, I guess, 30 years now, really, getting little peeks behind the scene.
Yeah.
And now it's like anyone who's made it through, we've come back a little bit to what it was like in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was like Jamie Salter coming into a meeting with you guys and Donna Jake and Chuck and everybody, and just saying, I'm going to make all the money.
Yeah.
But all those people were in the room talking about, like, how are we going to get the rest of these ski resorts to figure this out? I remember at the Montana Trans World Industry Conference, I sat for an hour and listened to someone talk about full release bindings.
Yeah.
And there was like leash laws. There were people that were petitioning for stronger leash laws.
Yeah.
It's a huge community, but it's actually quite a small industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like everybody's sort of adjacent to one another. Like you said, you and Ernie and Chuck go for dinner every time you see them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't seen Chuck in a while, and I heard about his heart attack, and hope he's doing okay, man.
Yeah, he's doing good. Actually, I just heard that from Ernie. He's doing good.
And man, it's kind of sad that we're not doing OR anymore. We're not doing a big trade show anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And those were glory years, man. We really loved going to, you had to, right? You had to go to Vegas,
You had to go.
And I remember, having the guys, rent a U-Haul truck or a Ryder truck and go out, and then I'd have to help them set it up, and just I'd always, when I got back from Vegas, I was always sick, like 2 weeks afterwards because of partying and because of eating the Bellagio buffet every night and just drinking all that. I mean, seriously, it was rough, but it was super fun because you see those guys that, once a year at the shops that help you out. And I miss those days. I mean, we're saving a lot of money by not doing the big show.
Yeah, of course.
And it's good for business. We still do the regional shows, but man, I just wish, and look, I'm a Colorado guy, right? Our factory's in Denver. I honestly, and I said this at the time, I thought it was a mistake to bring it to Denver because I think for a big national show, Vegas is national. Denver, it's a great city, but you're not going to get a lot of people from California and the East Coast like you would Vegas, right? So in my opinion, it turned it into maybe just a glorified big regional show.
I never got to go to Denver, because the year that it switched was the year, it's got to be 2006 or 2007 or 2005. That was it. I wasn't a buyer at the shop anymore. And I remember thinking in my heart, okay, it's going to be on snow demos was the deal that was the big pitch.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, trade shows are about relationships.
Yeah.
You're not able to ride a board or bring your buyer, ride 50 boards and decide on, you need perfect conditions to ride a board. You need your own bindings and boots. You need to keep everything, it's hard to not get hyped up if it's really good conditions. You're like, wow, these boards work completely awesome. But if it's icy and crappy, you're like, well, I don't even really want to go. So let's call it what it is. Those meetings, those trade shows were about togetherness, parties, the community.
Well, just seeing a surge. Just to see the whole sport of snowboarding grow so quickly. I mean, those trade shows in Vegas, let's say 97, 98, 99. I mean, it was so packed you couldn't even walk, and there was Asians everywhere and Europeans everywhere. I mean, dude, it was insane. It was so good for the sport. It really was, and going over to ISPO back in the day, or the shows in Japan, and they were packed. I mean, that was a special time, man.
Yeah. Well, you had to write an order on a piece of paper at the time, right? Like that was a thing.
You had to write an order.
You had to write an order on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and file the order away, and hey, don't lose that file. But you got all this paper.
It's true, man. Yeah. So as the world becomes more globalized, there's less reason for people to travel to the same place to be, to do a handshake deal, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that was the thing that always struck me about you with Murray, because I've met you a few times over the years. He's proud to be in business with you. You guys are like-minded.
Yeah.
And he is all about the relationship.
Yeah.
That's his thing. He's like, look, you even said it when you were saying it. I'm like, that's like Murray's words.
Murray's a ball buster, man.
But he pays, right? But he pays.
No, absolutely.
That's the thing. He pays his bills.
Murray's a good
guy. But he's a ball buster.
He's smart. He's a good businessman.
Because he knows what he's got to do to sell it on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt about it.
And he's got to pay, same as you, he's got to pay he's got to pay my kid.
Absolutely.
My kid works for him.
Yeah.
So, but you guys have that same sort of sensibility.
Yeah.
He doesn't suffer like dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's like, hey, if the board's broke, they're warranty, right?
Yeah.
I remember Mike from Mervyn.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at a Mervyn time when all the boards, I shouldn't say all the boards. There was a lot of edge pinging and D-lands and weird stuff was happening. Flakes were chipping off on day one. And Murray was going, hey, here's a laundry list of kind of problems we're having. And then Mike's going, that was bad glue. Yeah. He goes, well, how much bad glue was there? He goes, I don't know. We could still be using it. Like, I don't know which one is bad. And Murray's just going, what? Because Mike had been told by someone else, like, look, you got to tell these guys they got too many warranties.
Yeah.
And Murray's like, okay, but the warranties are like because of bad materials, right?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how could there be too many? This seems to fall on your side of the equation. Like, yeah, I've seen some pretty fun negotiations between Murray and some awkward and uncomfortable ones too, because he does have a very ball buster kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to negotiate with him for wages, and I never won.
I mean, that's why he's still in business, right?
Yes,
I mean, that's there's like you mentioned before. I mean, count how many brands have come and gone in this industry, you know, and it's one thing to think you're going to be able to run a successful business in a brand, but it's another thing to actually do it. And especially, we're in our going on 31 years, and man, it takes a lot of discipline for sure.
31 years of Never Summer?
Yeah, Never Summer.
That's not including the Swift stuff.
No.
Holy
no. We're
crap.
going in. Yeah, it's 30 years this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. No.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, thank you. As a private company, and we're stronger than we've ever been now. And I hope the shops understand that we have to sell a few boards direct, but the one thing that they need to know is we're not going to price compete, and we're not going to oversaturate the market ever. So those shops that we still have, we're not going to go into the shop next door and open them up.
No,
it doesn't make any sense. So it just makes us a healthier company, and we'll be able to ship better product on time.
Well, you got 30
even better.
Years. Yeah, you got 30 years of finger on the pulse stuff, right?
Yep.
Like you're paying attention to that.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Yep.
Right. That's the relationship we're talking about with the retailer and the manufacturer.
Yep.
I mean, so if you guys were just manufacturing and you were going through a sales agency, they probably would have told you to build China boards like a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And said like, hey, come on, we're not going to be able to pay us. Once you put a middleman, then they're going, we need another guy.
I'm not going to name names, but there was a dude back, it's been about 10 years, 12 years that wanted to distribute Never Summer up in Canada. And he's like, dude, I could sell 10,000 snowboards in Canada of your brand. And I'm like, really? 10,000? Come on.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Canada, that's insane.
Yeah.
But my point is,
it's a weird claim.
But my point is, you could see these dollars and you can see these numbers, but it's not realistic.
Yes.
So why the hell would I want to destroy a relationship with somebody that's helped us on a hope that's not going to materialize?
I mean, those are the choices that business people seem to be making on a fairly regular basis, right?
I got a funny story that kind of ties into that. So Japan, back in 94, 95, Japan was surging, and that's how a lot of companies got their start, was that money that poured in.
Because they'd pay up front.
Absolutely. So we put this full page ad in of me bending the board backwards, right? Full page ad in Snowboarder magazine. I think about a week later, we get a facsimile, right, from the Agate Corporation in Tokyo. Fumito Nagahara, great guy. And he's like, hey, I want to distribute your boards. We're going to fly into Denver, next week. Can you meet with us? And we want to be the exclusive distributor. I'm like, sweet. Yeah, come on out. So at that time, we had a little 1,200 square foot, garage. And we laid out all of our hand tools. And we had one bandsaw. And we had the old hydraulic press that we bought from Steve Link,
Nice.
And he comes into town, and we seal the deal on 500 snowboards. And at that time, man, 500 was like 10,000, right? Because we're just getting our start.
Yeah.
And they wire over a shit ton of money, and it's just my brother and I and two other guys, helping out, cutting boards and whatnot. So then the next year, he comes over, and it's surging, right? And he orders 3,000 snowboards. And we're like, 3,000? This is incredible. Well, then he's wiring like 300K in. That's like 3 million now. Like, we're like, this is insane. And we didn't blow it. And so the next year, I think it was 5,000 units, if I remember correctly. Okay, but this is the funny part. So they order 5,000, and then I go over to Tokyo to a show. And he wants me to see the show and the success over there. So I get over there, and he picks me up at the airport in this like mauve colored, like Mercedes wagon. And I'm like, oh man, this guy's got money. He's sending money. We're doing well,
Yeah.
So I was pumped. So we go from basically 0 to like 5,000 units in like 3 years. Now, we didn't have a team at all. And we advertised full page ads in like Snowboarder magazine. We had no marketing whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, we're living high, and the next year, he's like, hey, you need to come over to a trade show. We need to talk. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be awesome. So I fly over there, and this time he picks me up in like a mauve colored Hyundai or no, seriously, he lost his ass, right?
No.
And he ordered like 500 snowboards. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And obviously a lesson in economics and marketing, if you don't have the sales and the marketing to support that quick, growth, then all of a sudden your name is going to be much. We didn't sell boards in Japan for like 10 years after that, because think about 5,000 snowboards unsold.
Yeah.
The snowboards don't biodegrade, right? They're going from pawn shop to garage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, lesson learned, right? You don't want to think, if somebody's going to say, we can take this, this company from here to there quickly, it's not real.
He didn't have the retailers on his side.
He had the money. He had the money.
Only had the money.
And he had a dream. Right.
Oh my God.
And we spent the money.
Yes.
And we grew our business. Okay. We didn't blow it.
Yeah.
But man, I felt bad, and we're still doing business with them now, though. On a much smaller scale. But it was just a good lesson, and you can't grow a brand that quick unless you're going to throw a shit ton of money at marketing
and getting the stuff out to where it's got to go.
Yeah.
Right.
But if a guy's sincerely trying and is snowboarding and skiing growing, who knows, man? I think it's a healthy industry, but are we seeing growth like we saw in the 90s? Absolutely not. No. That's ridiculous, okay?
I don't think anybody
So we
is,
have to be realistic about how many units we're going to put in the marketplace.
Right. And keep all 75 of your staff, right?
Because I remember, Bert at the, let's say early 2000s, late 90s, some of the specialty shops that really became stoked on Never Summer because Burton was like forcing growth. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, they're like, listen, man, you can't force us to order more product. We know what we can sell.
Yeah, unless you want to take it back.
And any brands that have survived have had to grow through all of that and realize that, hey, listen, it's the industry's this big, and don't oversaturate it.
Right, because you look at like the lesson from, say, something like Ride, right?
Absolutely.
Ride was a very public lesson in exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
Like, woohoo, we're this huge company. We've taken our stock from 25 cents to, I think Jamie Salter said it was like $70 at one point.
Yep.
But then it just, the bottom falls out of it.
Yep.
Because everybody's excitement, it doesn't match up to what real world demand is for product and quality. And you're focusing on the right thing, and you always have. Why and how did that come about? Like, is that you and your brother just have that?
We're pretty frugal.
Attitude?
We're pretty frugal. Not that I learned a lot in school, but I studied econ at CSU. I was a dropout, but my dad had businesses. He started a software business back when he was in the late 60s, when he was like 20 years old.
Come on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And hell, I think he only went to school a couple of years, but he was just driven and an entrepreneur. And my brother and I kind of, saw what he did. And so you just have to make smart decisions and not, because I was driving a damn, Honda Civic for the first few years, this company.
Right.
I remember the guys from Solid Snowboards?
Of course.
Okay, so we were in a small little strip mall after we left Steve Link's factory. God, this would have been 93, I think it was. We were in this little strip mall. Where I said that we had the Japanese distributors come in, and we just had this small little space. And I remember the Solid guys, I think it was Neil Rankin, somebody else came down, and they were in a Mercedes, like a real nice Mercedes.
Yeah.
My brother and I I had a Honda Civic, and he had an Isuzu, 2-wheel drive truck. We're like, who are these guys, man? And so we're like, oh, and all the guys, a lot of people in Summit County is like, man, this is the next, brand you got to watch out for. These guys have all the pros and yada, 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 And so, who knows how they spent their money, but we looked at that like, oh my God, man, they probably got a big
chunk of cash from somebody,
Yeah.
and we never got that.
Right,
We got,
right.
you know, my brother's father-in-law put in some money, and then, you know, Tim and I were the sweat equity, right?
Exactly.
And but he'd never put in a big lump sum of cash. He would put in $5,000 here, $2,000 there, $10,000 here,
And you'd have to
we-
tell them
and
what you were buying with it. It wasn't just
absolutely,
for fun.
absolutely,
Right,
man. Because if
Yeah.
you know, once we started getting those big, you know, wire transfers from Japan, then you got to really be. You got to be real careful about what you spend that money on, because it's, you know, you're so liquid. You're
Yeah.
like, holy crap, let's go. Well, we should have a party because we want to, you know, we want to get people stoked on, you know, NS. And
Well, see, that's the thing, and I've maintained this my whole life. Like, I could work for Murray, and you know, his business acumen kind of rubbed off on me. I was definitely paying attention.
yeah,
But the most thing that I learned was that I don't want to be. That's not my job that I want to do.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I don't
yeah.
want to have to make money decisions
Yep.
because I make bad money decisions.
Yep.
If I got that check, I'd be taking
Yep.
you know, you and Murray and anybody that's in my vicinity
Yeah.
heli boarding.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even have the car.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, I was
Yeah.
very frugal. I only spent it on, you know, going to Alaska with 10 friends for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and trust me, all of us do that, right?
Yeah.
We make
Yeah.
mistakes, but at
Yeah.
some point you got to make more good decisions than bad decisions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm not the one that would be. I run a you know a small business with
Yeah.
this, and you got to be tight with your accounting. You can't
Absolutely.
just go wherever you want to go and
Absolutely.
spend whatever you want to spend.
Oh yeah.
You need to watch your money so it doesn't go out the window.
There was these industry conferences too.
Yeah,
You remember the Trans World Industry Conference?
100%. Yeah,
I never went, and I'm
Oh.
like, how? Because we couldn't afford it. You know, I'd be like, all right, we're going to Whistler, wherever they were, you
Yes.
know, and it's
Yeah.
like, dude, number one, I can't afford this.
Yes.
Number two, I typically don't like the competition, so I don't want to be hanging out with them. You know what I mean? Like, this is just, you know, it's just not for me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the guys that just stayed home making snowboards.
Yeah.
So that you could take time off
Yeah.
instead of working your ass off so you could pay to go hear what everybody thinks is going to happen in the snowboard
Yeah,
industry.
absolutely.
Yeah. I get it 100%. You've run a really good business for a really long time, and this has been a great conversation, Tracey. Thanks for having me up to your home, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
what a
Eric.
beautiful place you live. Like
Yeah.
the sun's going down over the mountains, and you've got these kick-ass campers. Do you want to talk about these a
Yeah,
little bit?
real quick. Well, so we you know, a couple years ago, we're like, man, let's do something else. We used to build longboards, and we did that for a few years.
Yeah.
and we sold like 10,000 a couple of
Jesus.
years in 1 year.
Wow.
Oh yeah, man, we were doing good, but obviously longboarding kind of, you know, came and went, and so we wanted to have another, you know, future product. And so, you know, like with snowboards, you know, you've got traditional camber, and you've got a lot of teardrop campers out on the road now, these small campers that can be towed by small cars. And so I wanted to build something a little bit different. And I love Frank Lloyd Wright architecture. And he's got a house, Taliesin in Wisconsin, that he built in 1911, and then he built Taliesin West in Scottsdale in 1937. And I took a tour of that house in Scottsdale, and I'm like, man, that's what we need to do. No teardrop. Let's do a little mini Taliesin conifer. You know what I mean? So it's in my opinion a beautiful piece of art. It's a 1,500-pound camper that can be towed by pretty much any little small car. It's called skyviewcampers.com. I've got it on the shelf for right now until the supply chain smooths out a little bit, because of all of our windows come from Europe and we're having difficulty, and I don't want to take deposits right now. But it's a beautiful small camper, beautiful woodworking, and just very few things that can go wrong. And it's the quality of Never Summer too. And so I see this being a part of, you know, what we do in the future on the side.
Yeah.
I love travel, and I think that people like, you know, we talked about earlier, I think people are downsizing their life and they want better balance, doing fun things, traveling if they can work from the road. The van life thing, you know, is cool and intriguing, but, you know, if you park your van and you put the awning out and get everything out, and then you're like, oh shit, I want to take a drive, or I need to go back into town and pick something up, you got to put everything back up. This little camper is nice. You just drop it off, go take a drive, come back. You can live here, you know, for a couple days, go to a national park, live a couple days, go to a beach, Music festivals. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, this would
Yeah.
be beautiful for a music
It's
festival.
unbelievable.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
skyviewcampers.com.
Yeah. The first thing you did when I got here, you're like, hey, sit down in the camper. I'm sitting in this camper looking around going, okay. Yeah. As soon as you mentioned the architect, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright. Yeah, he's one of the most famous
Absolutely.
architects in the United States. Simplicity, efficient use of space, and just beautiful lines.
Yeah. It's a really innovative camper. That's the
appreciate
thing
it.
about it. It's very, like, I don't want to say bougie because
Yeah,
that's not the right
yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
It's very useful.
Yeah, but here it goes back to how we view snowboarding. If the market's dominated by a bunch of campers that look the same, the teardrops, then we want to have something that looks a little bit different and has a different message. But it's a simple message,
Yeah.
And so anyway,
I love it. It's extremely well designed.
Thank you.
And they're gorgeous. And so, yeah, go check them out for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like that next kind of project, like you say, like kind of tinkering, right?
Yeah.
Like snowboarding has kind of plateaued as far as tinkering goes at this point.
Absolutely.
Maybe there's going to be some crazy innovation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hollow snowboards. Who knows?
Who knows?
Nobody knows.
Absolutely.
Different shapes, different functions, something like that.
Yeah, that's what's fun about it, though. You just don't know.
Yeah, no idea.
But what I do feel is I think people are trying to simplify life right now, especially with what's going on in the world. And, we love to snowboard and we love to do fun things. And, generations before, they would retire. I mean, my wife's father-in-law or my wife's father, he retired, and then like 2 years later he was dead, because he loved to work, and he didn't have hobbies. And I think that's just a little bit different nowadays.
Well, yeah, with this COVID thing too, there's so many things of like you can keep in touch with loved ones over Zoom calls and FaceTime and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then so many people working from home.
Yep.
The next evolution of working from home is having your home be mobile.
Exactly.
So you can live wherever you want while you're doing it.
Yeah, this is basically the tiniest of tiny homes.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
the way I look at it.
Yeah. And you guys got to check them out for sure. I'm into it.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna the whole time I'm working it in my brain. How am I gonna get one of these things?
Nice.
How do I work it? So
well, you
that
could do
I've
your
got one of
podcast. Just drag this
Oh
around.
my
You could do
God,
your podcast
exactly.
inside. You sit on the couch.
Yeah, and have the one there, one there.
That's right.
Yeah,
You're
we should have
sitting
done
on
it from
the
inside the podcast
Dude,
in the thing. Because
Missed
that was
opportunity.
when you're like clip it to the table. I was like, dude, these are kind of heavy, but it's like it's
durable.
super durable, super well built. Yeah. Awesome, Tracy.
Thanks, Eric.
I know whatever you put your mind to, you're going to be successful at. You can see in your eyes, like, and your smile. You're a happy guy. You spent your life following your dreams, huh?
Yeah. No. Well, with a lot of help, obviously. It's a team.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks,
dude.
Eric.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
That was really good.
Awesome, man.
FNRad shout-outs this week to Tracey Canaday and his wife, Christy. Thank you guys for having me up to your home. It's a beautiful place with unbelievable views just outside of Boulder, Colorado. Check out skyviewcampers.com. That's the campers that Tracey was talking about. We sat under the awning of one of them that was set up in his driveway. I mean, these are beautiful campers, and I know that I want one. All right, skyviewcampers.com. It was awesome to meet up yesterday with Nate. He's one of the listeners to the show. He just randomly was up Seymour. I was riding up there with Jake McIntyre, one of the original Seymour kids, Wildcats, and that was super fun. So rad. Make sure you say hi if you hear me blabbing away in the lift line or at the top of a mountain. It's always awesome to meet people that listen to the show. All right, and be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast, presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.